Hello, good morning, good evening, good night, good day, good time. Um, you may be able to hear it, probably. I've been a little sick this past week. I didn't have much of a voice, and so I'm a little behind on these videos. But today is currently Saturday, and I'm gonna do all my videos catching up on last week. Um, Excuse my voice, so sorry. But yeah, let's get into it. Shout out Sandridge. This is back to the LAMDA log. Week 2, day 1, January 19th, 26, known as Blue Monday, because apparently it's like the saddest day of the year, the second Monday in January. Second? This is the third Monday. The third Monday in January, apparently, is when it hits you. We had a quick little warm up, the huge, and then we jumped right into voice into text with George. Um, I'm just going to read through all the notes and we'll get to it. Yeah. Um, so we reviewed logos, ethos, pathos. Remember, logos is an appeal to reason or logic. Pathos is an appeal to emotion, and ethos is an appeal to authority. Okay. Best speeches lean most on logos because reason is the best argument. You could feel something and it may not be true, or someone could be an expert and still lie, right? So, pathos, too much of pathos makes it feel very manipulative, and people don't like that. So, um, oh, asked about the idea of a rhetorical question, and it's not necessarily just an unanswering question. It was rhetorical, meaning you shouldn't have answered it, but it's rhetorical, meaning the questions ask the audience to participate and think and apply it to themselves. So it's contemplative, contemplative, contemplative. It's supposed to make you contemplate. There are lots of techniques to apply, and it's important to know the techniques. So there's kind of three little sections. I'll show you this. Um, right, we have our three appeals: appeal, logos, pathos, ethos. Then we have our three branches of oratory. There's deliberative, which is like political, and that's the future tense. What are we going to do? Then there's judicial or forensic. That's the past, looking back, right? You can think of like forensic work like in CSI, crime scene investigation. Forensics is looking at what happened in the past. And there's epidatic, I believe that's how it's pronounced, or display, and that's oratory, and that's the present. Excuse me. Oh, oh yeah, that's what I just did. Yeah. So we had some homework to read the rule of three on Canvas. It's a little chapter, and the chapter on repetition. Then we watched Charlie Chapman's speech from The Great Dictator, and asked just like, what do you observe? What do you see? It really begins and leans into pathos with the individuals. It's a good use, lots of great uses of repetition. it it cut over to like a suffering woman. Most of it was self-contained, except for that. It was mostly just like basically what this shot is of him talking. Um, except for that moment. And then it's has a really positive attitude and it's inspiring. Repeated words of machine, unloved, unnatural, ethos, and quoting the Bible. Quoting the Bible in this instance would almost be an appeal to all three, right? It's emotional because of the Christian feeling. It's ethos because what has better authority than God himself. And then it's logos because what is more logical than the utmost truth, right? For these people. And then there was a call to action to unite and fight tyranny. Do not despair. I felt the call to action before it was called. Like I was getting into it. I was like, yeah. There's good antithesis and great uses of we and us, right? But it was very stylized and stylistic. One of our students is he's German English, and so he grew up half in England and half in Germany, and it was very impactful to him to see the rhetorical and style of speech that Hitler used, but with a positive intention, because so much is just disregarded and banned almost to say from the way that Hitler and Nazis did things. It's like, oh, you can't talk like that anymore because that's how Hitler talked. And so it was cool for him and impactful to see someone use that means and that style, but for a positive purpose. And styles change and they influence the way we are perceived, right? When you give your speech, you presuppose that the audience is capable of affecting the change we're calling for. That's important because it gives us more passion and more feeling. Line of vision started forward and then opened to the sides and then finished with up, which kind of showed that one, he was like aspiring towards the future, and also he was addressing these soldiers and this great crowd. This creates a feeling of talking to a huge group, and we are together to be able to do this. The crowd grows. There is a science to this, right? Philosophy grew out of rhetoric, but many believe that it grew out of theater and poetry. So, what does the speech cost, right? What is the emotional effort? What happens if you don't say it or you do say it? What is the cost of it? Knowing beyond knowing lets you live in the moment and then it's true. I don't remember that. Knowing beyond knowing. Anyway, I wrote it in. This is why I shouldn't do my work a week after I learned it. Anyway, so I should look up Eileen Atkins, who's an actress. Um, and then work the audience like you would work a scene partner, right? You have to find it new every time, rehearse and practice it so you know your beats and movements, then you rediscover them. Then you can rediscover them in the moment, right? And then we watched another speech. It was Parliament about Margaret Thatcher, and this was Glenda Jackson, who was an actress who got involved in politics heavily. I'm pretty sure she's an Oscar winner, um, if not Oscar nominated. This was April 10th of some date. And there was a ton of detail and description, pathos of description, really great in describing how Margaret Thatcher affected the poor and the middle class and the lower class, the homeless and the children. She had these big gestures that were not polished per se. It didn't feel like a performance. It felt much more real, but it was great. Antithesis of virtues and vices. It was frustrating because everyone was like speaking over her and like shouting and stuff. It's like, let the woman speak. Jeez. People are like, oh, just heckling her through it. Um, a quote she said that I love is that everyone knew the price of everything and the value of nothing. That's a great way to describe this, the negative, um, the potential negative effects of consumerism and this negative capitalism of the prices of it, but it's not the value, right? You lose the value of taking care of the needy and of family because it's all about profit. That's cool. She needs to have great focus to stay on track during all of the heckling. Great sculpting of the phrases. It was a really good one. I loved it. Our homework was then to look up Glenda Jackson, who I believe worked with George, I think, but not a lot of facts and numbers because the people in the room, she knew her audience and they lived through it. It wasn't necessary to prove the things she was saying. It was just bringing to recall what they had all known. Um, there's this principle of conceding to win, because people were honoring Margaret Thatcher because she was the first woman prime minister. And she says, yeah, she may have been a woman, but not by my definition, right? And what are womanly attributes and the women that she saw who took care of the country when the men were off during World War II and all of these things, right? Yeah, also with the first one with the dictator, you could see the stitching, meaning that you could see the work that had gone into it. It's like here I will gesture and here I will speak, and it's a little um performative, not necessarily bad, but just performative. You can see the stitching. And with hers, it was just natural. It just felt like she was just speaking from the heart. It could have been rehearsed, it could have been a memorized thing, it could have been improvised, but you don't know because you don't see it. Um, Never let them break you. Don't go off and cry or get overly huffy, right? But if Glenda Jackson had responded emotionally to this, they could have minimized the things that she was saying, and she didn't. Um, then we got two Julius Caesar speeches. There's the Brutus speech and Antony speech from Act 3. In ancient Rome, landowning men were the represented democracy. So citizens are those who are landowning men. Good thing to know. Caesar, the word Caesar means king. Julius takes over as ruler in a time of turmoil and kind of breaks the democracy of the time. The major generals were Julius Caesar, Mark Antony, and Brutus. Brutus represents integrity and bringing in the riches. He really helped the people. Um, and prose is from the head and verse is from the heart. Brutus was in um, prose, and there was tons of repetition. It was rhetorical questions, antithesis, and manipulative questions, meaning it was um, kind of giving the answer for them, saying, "Oh, um, if I didn't kill Caesar, if I didn't kill Julius, then this, then like any idiot would have seen this or that." It's basically, if you don't agree with me, you're an idiot. So, are you an idiot? And no one would say yes. Attacking slash separating the man from the symbol and the message. Then our homework is to read Mark Antony's speech and stand up and practice landing these thoughts. Write it down from reading and then practice. Be familiar and ready to perform with style and delivery. And then we had mask, and I was taking notes when Michaela was like, "Hey, Lady took notes on all of this." I was like, "Brilliant! I'll take her notes." So I'm gonna read off her notes as well because she wasn't feeling well, so she took down notes. But the very few notes I took says um, that we did this undulation, like knee. I'll do it. Okay, yeah, you twisted my arm. So this undulation of knee, pelvis, chest, head, knee, pelvis, chest, head. And then we can spin that, like bring that down. And then like how small, whoop, we're going the wrong way. How small can you bring it until it's just like in you and you can still feel it? And then like how big can you do it? And then that brings you off balance and then like playing with the disbalance of it. And I need a shave. Look at that. Like I said, I'm in a yuck. Um, we played Shiva, which I think I explained before last week. But you can go bam, Shiva, or boing, and then you just go around. And if you make a mistake, you just repeat it, and you're like, um, um, um. But this time we elevated that into, instead of just making your own mistake three times, you share it with someone else. So you go, and then you look at someone else and they go, "Ah," and then they look at someone. following the line. They're like, ah! And then it goes back to the first motion. They're like, yeah, yeah, ah, right? And then it builds. You do that 3 times. And then you go right back into it. Shiba or bam or well, you wouldn't do boing at that point. And then our level and our energy built, and Michaela was calling it until you get to a 10, which is a Gumby, and then you all go into the center. You're like, you have a little dance party. Um, yeah. And then we ended with a little bit of mask work. And um I was with a partner. I'm trying to remember who I was with. Oh, I remember. But my partner did their mask bit, and then I did my mask bit, and then we shared it as a class. And the first person went had this silly, they're these half masks, so they cover like this much of your face, so your mouth works. Sometimes they cover like this much, so it has an upper lip built in. And this one was like, "I'm very sad. Like I could contort my face that way, but these sad eyes. I can't make my eyebrows go like, yeah, like that, with like the lips up." And so the girl who's doing this was just like and then was introduced to have a word. I was like baby. And then it turns out she like mimed having thrown the baby out the window, and then she was so sorry. And it was so great. Such great physical comedy, so funny. And then another one went and had an old man half mask. And then he just kept being obstinate and kept not doing what Michaela said. She was like, come out, come out. And he's like, "Eh, and then he tried to like shut the door. And we learned timing, that you want to like do everything towards the audience. So you look at the door, you look at the audience, you try. You look at the door, you look back at them. Stuck. His word was stuck. And then he was like, and he finally got it to move. And then he was just coming out and just was, it was so funny. They were both so good. Okay, those were my quick little notes. Let's see what someone else has written. Um, week 2, day 1. 5-minute warm up, self led, warming up your joints, release hips and shoulders, undo the joints, wrists, elbows, shoulders, neck, hips, knees, ankles, voice, and let this take you through the space. So just kind of warming things up. Many people went back to the same spot in the room. Notice this. Do you do this in other classes? Interesting notice of patterns. These are fun notes. Um, undoing and then growing bigger, then getting smaller with this idea inside while Michaela was drumming. Together go into walking in the space, jogging, running, madness, breath control, the breath of the audience. When you're not together, the audience isn't sure who to follow. If they had their breath, if they hold their breath for too long, they will need to disengage. Yeah, then the undulation that I was talking about, build, then bring down, and then walking through the space, like the teacher told, turning. What are the steps? Oh, this was another one. It was a stop, look, turn, step. So, so in mask, there is, you're going and you're walking, and then you stop, turn to where you're walking, meet your thing, and then you have this little back, and then you walk. And so mask and clowning has all this kind of over exaggeration, oversimplification thing. So I'm walking, and then I stop, I look to where I'm going, I change, and then I have this little rock into it. And you can do that as goofy as you want, right? So you could be running and go right? And then you can do that from different parts of your body too. Like if you're walking from the pelvis, stop, look, turn, right? and then the chest or the nose or wherever it is you're coming from. So let us continue. Oh, sweatshirt's big. Believe. Yeah, stop, look, turn, step. There's something missing. That was the counter step that builds you forward. And in lots of things, right? Like even when you're jumping up, you go down to jump up. Or there's always this counter to something. Um, if the body is in the right place, the voice will follow it, right? Like if we're making a character and I'm up here, it's going to make me talk a certain way, and then that's just how this character is going to respond. And if the body's in the right place, then the voice will follow, or so it says. Don't push, allow, right? We follow from the chest, from the head, from the knees, from the pelvis, and reacting from that as our center. The emotion is coming from there. Excuse me. Um, we tried two at once, knees at chest, pelvis and head. I don't think our class actually did that. For many, it was easy to lead with both, um, but reacting looked unbalanced or disoriented. Balance between the focus and the chaos. Then they did Shiva, growing bigger, louder, chaos, speaking over one another. Passing focus is um, more than just a gaze, maintain center but shift weight. And then they did the mask element, just look at it. What element is it embodying? And then embody that element. What does it sound like? Now turn around, transform, explore abstract movement. Can you put the nose, eyebrows in your chest and pelvis? And then she talks about the two who did it in her class. And then Jacobean is full of these big contrasts, right? Contrast, how the audience responds to being taken by surprise, right? Really feed into them. If the audience is giving something to them, give more. Um, must be listening to the audience, time travel, look at us, move, holding breath, finding balance, because if we wait too long, the audience will breathe on their own, isolation of the neck. Mask as a fixed point for the eye. The audience sees the body with peripheral vision. If the mask moved, it would be too much. So you don't want to move the mask. Whenever you move the mask, it's subtle, and then like the body moves more and the mask kind of stays set. That was mask. And then we had embodiment. Um, which was great. We walked the space, we created a bubble, um, like that was surrounding our body. And then we explored different artifacts or different things going on in the bubble. Like there's a hole in the bubble and it's raining and it's just a little misty rain. And then we walked the room and how was that? What did it feel like? Um, wow, this feels like it was forever ago. Um, and then there's a clock ticking in the bubble, and how did that make us feel? And then there was the smell of fresh bread. And I this week's been a little rough for me. I've been sick and emotional, I guess. Because I was thinking about the fresh bread, and I thought like back to being a kid in Kentucky, and my mom had just made fresh bread, and I was gonna put too much butter and too much jam on it, and just that smell of warm bread that I would always try to practice cutting on because the two things I want to be able to cut a really straight line, and I practiced on my mom's homemade bread and on like bagels. And so I was practicing that, and it was just this melancholic feeling of being innocent and being a child. And it was sweet and sad. And then um and then the room was a castle as well. And so how would you respond or what would you see in a castle? And we walked the space and we explored how it felt and how we would move in that space in three dimensions, up, down, over. How would you sit in that space? How would you pick something up in that space? How would you have a ball and pass it to someone? And how would you acknowledge people? And just kind of embodying that. hence the class, embodiment. Um, and then the room was purple. And how does that make you feel, right? What is purple to you? I liked purple. Purple was mellow and luxurious and rich. And then there was a gray cloud that was above. We didn't have to look at it, but it was there. And then it slowly grew and grew and encompassed the whole sky. And I like a cloudy day. I don't know, it's atmospheric. It's storybooky. I don't know. I like rain and clouds. Um, so so I was like happy. I was like, this is nice. And then Anna, the teacher, said that the cloud was filled with tears. I was like, oh. And we kind of explored the idea about how can you have these two atmospheres working at once because they're never simultaneously acting. Your attention goes to one and then to another. And so it kind of became this little metaphor that lambda was, I mean, the purple was lambda because that's lambda's color, and the gray was the sadness I was feeling, and how I love lambda, and I'm so grateful to be here, and I'm so blessed, and it's an amazing experience, but I'm sad and I miss my wife and my son, and and it was just this interesting experience. Um, then we circled and we passed the ball, doing our yes, nos, and then without words and without the ball. Our homework is to listen to Michael Chekhov's audio on Canvas. We had a little 10-minute break. We got into groups of four, two pairs. We had already kind of broken off into who we were going to do the scene with. I'm in a group of three, and I'll be reading Vershinin, and the two girls will be what you want to call it, Masha and the three sisters. And then how it was set up is you had two people. Two of the people were reading the lines, and then for the two people who were just passing the ball, and they were acting as Vershin and Masha. And whenever you felt a shift or a change, you would say shift. And if both characters felt it, you would mark the other people reading it would mark a line, and they're holding the people throwing its script. Um, and then if it was just individual, it'd just be like a dash. And so you're kind of marking these unit shifts and these changes. And so you're passing the ball the whole time while they read the script to you. And so you're just passively listening, and then you're like, shift, shift, right? And then we switched, and then we read while the other people passed the ball. And then I did it one more time with the other girl, so she got the experience as well. And then we read it face to face and marked any more shifts that we noticed. Then we gathered back into a circle to discuss our experience. And my experience be completely different, and that's fine. There is no right or wrong, just our experience. Um, it's good to have a third person and first person perspective on these scripts and to be able to capture our first impressions. Chekhov said that repetition is a growing power. Um, And then there were times when, as we were passing it, we would drop the ball. And then why do you drop the ball? Analyze that. Is it because something happened? Your focus shifted? Like what was that? And then toward the end, there were more shifts. The tempo shifts. The heartbeat shifts. Um, it builds. The word, and then some fun little tidbits. The word for unit or bit or beat or slice or piece in Russian is all the same word. It's kusok, kusok, I think. Kusok, kusok, kusok. I don't know what it is, but that's what she said. But it's the same word, and that means a lot of times we break down, oh, that's a bit, that's a unit, that's a French scene or whatever, and we try to analyze it too much. And the word that Anna likes better is shift because there's a change, right? And so instead of trying to do different things, it's just like, is it a big piece or a little piece? She likes that better. And then we stepped out of the space, um, lifted and released our golden ring of attention or whatever it is we do. And that was a class, and it was chill. It was nice. Um, I enjoyed it. Then we had a master class on Monday. We were at the school till 9. It was a long day. Um, and our master class was with Penny Churns, who is one of the directors of the Jacobean Projects, and Harriet Walter, who is a LAMDA grad, and she was um, the whatchamacallit, the head of the classical acting department when Ollie went to school, and she's a LAMDA grad, and she has a pretty great career. She was in Succession and Young Victoria and a few other things. Let me see. I'm gonna pull up her picture. Do 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 boop. Bow, up, ba, ba, da, 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 ba, ba, da. Harriet Walter. She's also in Sense and Sensibility and The Last Duel, which looks like a Star Wars. Oh, she was in Star Wars as well. She was in Episode 7, The Force Awakens. But this is her, Harriet Walter. Cool. Um, and so I just took some notes. We didn't get the last bit of it, the little ending, because I had my little music presentation class, which is just an individual singing class with a small group. And I think the point and option there and what's going on with that is that it's really just to build our kind of book and our resume. So Harriet is jealous of us here at the start of our careers. Um, and we're looking at the transactional relationships with love during these times. It's not just true. It's not just about true love. It's a business and a social agreement. Were these characters feeling a lack of freedom of the natural modern feelings of women? Probably not. You can only hope for something that's possible. And a lot of these women um, legally were property, right? If they weren't, I think I have this written down, but if they weren't their father's property, they were their husband's property, like legally speaking. I don't know how degrading or how demeaning that was, but that's just how it was written legally. You know what I mean? And there's this huge temptation to judge, but we want to better understand their given circumstances instead of saying, well, they're going to be this person who's demanding more because of course they would, but that's looking at it through our lens. And um can you find it as much about what you don't know, what, versus what you do? How can you how can you find out as much about what you don't know as what you do, right? So it's important to know that you don't know things and your character might not have known these things. um she wrote a book called in another person's shoes, talking about like kind of that empathy and acting. And then think about time, right? Travel through time. Don't frame objectives in a way of things um, you can't actually achieve. Things need to be achievable, right? Or believe they're achievable. Frame it in her life and her world. Midsummer starts with the threat of death to Lysander and Hermia, right? There's these stakes that a lot of times are forgotten. So really believe that and learn that. The past is another country. Poverty is another country too. So we need to think about the differences in poverty um, and in time as well. Think about how you uh, how far your character can reach and can dream. Where is their horizon? Then you can kind of put them in that place. Those in the past weren't constantly being surrounded, surveilled or watched. Field was freedom. They could truly be alone. It feels like we can't always be that. Play scenes to find out where your character is placed in society, what they are capable of, and what can they dream of. What makes Shakespeare modern is when his words become the actors and um, you soar on them, right? Like meaning that you can fly, that the words just flow and they feel like yours and they're modern in that sense. Those words have to be the only way to say it. Marlowe, um, then we had a student who performed a Portia speech, the "You Can See Me" Basonio. And then what is Portia giving away? Everything. Portia is offering herself as someone um, to be like she has all of this stuff and she's offering herself to be married. Um, and it's a substantial amount. She has a lot. This is a huge relinquishing of property. It's literally all she is and all she has for love. And it was set up by her father. And so she's willing to give up freedom and give up herself for this. And then another student went up and did the same speech, um, but with the emphasis, the direction to overemphasize all the terms about money, right? And it's interesting how we talk about love with words and with like financial words, value, invest, owe me, right? We see a person who can spend time. Oh, we see Portia, the person who can spend time in court, and we see that brilliance. Um, and that love is always framed through money. Love frees her from the monotony. She'll have a purpose for keeping a house and for um like you sometimes think of the mundane and the housework and kind of these traditional roles that women have played as confining, but a lot of times in this period they were freeing because it gave purpose um and worth in a sense to what the work they were doing to raise a family is such a noble thing to do. You can really lean into the cheeky and flirtatious factors of a situation. And the most powerful position for a woman in this time was to be a rich widow, right? That's where you had the most autonomy, um, which is just fascinating. And then she finds nature in her own financial, she finds value in her own financial setting. So pastime, uh, and then other cultures use use language differently. Like in Spanish, you say pasar el tiempo, you pass time. In English, we say we spend time. It's financial, right? Then two students did a dialogue from All's Well That Ends Well, and these kids were like chosen at the beginning of term to like learn these scenes or these monologues to be able to present in class in this workshop. Um, and then it was Bertrand, and Diana, and it's about the ring from All's Well That Ends Well. And Diana is constantly focused on objective, a stronger objective maybe, with lots of rhetorical comparison. Shakespeare is so good at capturing the intense male desire, right? Virginity is not about being prude, but it's about seeing her have the dignity um, of her household, right? Also, the reason that virginity was so esteemed at the time, it wasn't about purity. People didn't really care too much about purity and stuff until like Victoria. But in this time, it was because um, if you're a virgin at um, at your wedding, that's the only way to ensure that that child that comes from the wedding is yours, because the line of succession was so important, and and maintaining your family and your seed was what was important, which I thought was interesting. And then two other students did the same scene, but then they switched parts, and it was a great reversal and illumination. And when you haven't got something, you beg for it, right? We took a little 10-minute break to use the potty, get some water. And then we talked about ask yourself, why would your character speak or do or want these things? Um, Harriet, Harriet, I say her first name like we're friends. Harriet Walter is writing alternate speeches for Shakespeare's women that she doesn't understand, like Kate from Taming of the Shrew, Cressida from Troilus and Cressida. These women who she can't justify their choices, um, and Harriet Walters um, is really uh, equivocates the integrity. Uh, she likes to use integrity instead of virginity, because virginity had it's much more wrapped up in purity and other things, and so she uses the word integrity in her mind when she's playing one of these characters, because that's something she can hold on to much more than virginity. And then a woman's value is in her integrity or her virginity. Um, and so in part, she read some of these speeches that she wrote, and it was Cressida kind of like breaking down. Um, Virginity and these ideas, and she says, I cannot lose what leaves me feeling whole. That was an interesting idea. um yeah, and virginity is proof that the heir is the husband's. Yeah, that's what I said. And then women are able to be salacious when dressed as boys, like they can be cheeky um and profane, and salacious is a great word, during Shakespeare and his contemporaries. And then women were able to play on stage during the Restoration, but only to a certain age, because it was still looked as like as low as sex work because it was vulgar. And then we had to leave, and I think mostly what we missed was question and answers. And so then we had our music presentation. I was with a group of, who were there? Five of us? I think so. One, two, three, four. Oh, just four of us. Yeah. So we had a little warm up, a little get to know you. Um, what we want to do is bring music to this class to fill our repertoire and work on songs that we haven't yet. So the first guy sang "I'd Rather Be Sailing," but there was a confusion, and the music he brought was like a pit score. Um, and make sure your your sheet music is the proper stuff. Um, and also just like dumb down your sheet music for like the least possible accompanist. You don't know what skill or ability someone's going to have, so try to make it as easy as possible. He was invited to look into Murder for Two. We should all get a folk song, English folk like Irish, Scottish. Danny Boy is a good one, verse and chorus. Something from Warhorse, Benjamin Button, Once. Um, then another person sang Flowers, and she was asked to have a character piece. And then somebody sang As Long as He Needs Me, and it was great. And then I sang Better Than I, and my voice was not where it was, so I said it was great for a Disney audition or pantos. And I should look at Calamity Kate. Yeah. And then we tried to go back to the masterclass, but it was done. And that was week 2, day 1. Only 4 more days to go. But it was a great day. I was feeling sad. It gets better over the week, but yeah. Hope you guys have a great day, life, wonderful time. Bye.